Dustin and I are back this week to answer another commonly asked question, which is, how did you become a paranormal investigator? I didn't grow up dreaming of being a paranormal investigator. When I was little, I dreamt of growing up to be an artist one day, which is why you guys see me doing a lot of creative content on my own channel, trying to make that little girl who's still hiding in me happy. That said, my family was very open to the idea of the paranormal since we've all had weird experiences in our life. My mom even grew up in a house that was supposedly haunted. And I say supposedly because I had never had anything happen to me in that house, and my grandmother had owned it up until 2021, shortly before she passed. Now, from a young age, I was into history. My dad is a history nut, and I blame him for my love of history. Then in the 4th grade, I was introduced to genealogy by my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Droschers, and unknowingly, she created a monster. I just latched right onto it. I think the fascination for me with genealogy was having been somebody who always enjoyed history. Genealogy gave me the ability to connect my own ancestors to historic events. Fast forward many years later, in about 2000, I started working for a modeling agency out of Boston. This was kind of out of character for me because I was always pretty shy. I wasn't shy around people that I knew, but in public and around groups of people that I didn't know, I was pretty quiet. In order to try to shake me up and loosen me up, my agent suggested I take acting classes. I started taking acting classes through CP Casting in Boston, and from there I started doing extra work on movies like Mystic River, Fever Pitch, 21. You can actually see me in 21, the bar scene, blue hoodie. There was another show, Waterfront, that I did some extra work for. Then I started getting called for little parts, but I never landed them. I was a horrible actress, I'll be honest. But I did start getting into the local indie film scene to some degree. And through that, I met this guy, Brandon, who I became really good friends with. Brandon used to write, direct, and film his own indie films in and around Boston. Funny enough, Jay and Grant ended up meeting Brandon maybe a year after I had met him. At the time, they had their group, but they didn't have the show yet. So they were looking to have somebody film one of their investigations so that they could make a video to put on their website to explain to people who visited their website what it was they did and how their investigations worked. They invited Brandon out to an investigation so he could see how it worked. And then Brandon invited them to come to one of his shooting days for a small film that he was working on. And it ended up being the one and only day I was there to shoot because he had given me one small line, smart man, in this indie that he was working on. While there, the 3 of us got talking and we just hit it off and we ended up becoming really good friends. They became 2 bigger brothers I never asked for that I didn't know I needed at the time. Fast forward a few years later, Jay and Grant got the show. And there were several times they kept saying to me, you should come out for a case, you should come out for an investigation, it'll be a great time, you'll love it. And at the time I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be a ghost girl. I don't know that I want to do reality TV. I don't know that this is a good fit. I don't know if I'm a good fit. I'd never been on an investigation before either. I think part of me would have wanted to have gone on one without the cameras just to see if I even liked it without the added pressure. But they had asked several times and I politely declined several times. Then in 2006, I had what I call a year of death. We had 5 family members and friends pass away in a matter of 11 months. And I'll be honest, I was destroyed. I personally did not grow up in a church, so I had no set faith background. I didn't have a solid belief in a heaven or hell or any sort of afterlife. And it was funny because it took 5 people passing for me to realize I had 2 beliefs that completely contradicted each other. On one hand, I had it in my head that when we passed, we just ended and that was it. Like, I don't remember anything before I was born. Why does there have to be something after? On the other hand, I grew up telling ghost stories with my family. We did believe in the paranormal to some degree. We were open-minded. I found myself in a place where I hoped I was wrong. I hoped that we didn't just end. I hoped that there was more to death than being done or over. I'd lost so many people, and the idea of them being gone forever just, it made me sick. Weirdly, Jay and Grant reached out to me again shortly after the last person passed, maybe by a couple months. When Jay asked that final time, I was just like, you know what? Screw it. Let's do this. let's see if there's something to it. And that is how I got involved in this crazy little world. And it's been a ride. It's been a wild ride. How about you, Dustin? How did you become a paranormal investigator?
Well, much like you, K-Dub, being a paranormal investigator was not on the docket. Not only not what I thought I would be, I didn't know it was something you could be. I didn't know it was a real thing. You know, it's weird too. Like as a kid, they put all this pressure on you, right? Like, oh, when you get older, what do you want to be? How the hell do I know? So far, all I've been is a student, and I know I don't want to do that anymore. Like, that's how I felt as a kid, you know? I remember I would go to, like, the guidance counselor's office, and I'd watch, like, the videos on, like, different professions and all this stuff. I don't know. I wanted to be, like, a race car driver, but growing up in the North and not having a lot of money, those options were limited. I wanted to be the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, but by the time I graduated high school, I think I weighed 120 pounds. So that was not going to be the path either. I think chocolatier would have been nice if I could have been, like, a real life Willy Wonka. That might have been a road less traveled that I should have taken. But no, I ended up getting a degree in television production and radio production, and get tired of doing that in about 7 years' time, and went from working at local news stations to becoming an EMT. After 9/11, I switched professions and got into healthcare. But the paranormal was always just an interest. You know, it was always just a hobby. We talked in one of the other videos about what our first, you know, experience was, and that kind of, you know, lit that fire. I was more interested into what these things were. But I would just go out at night, like, and legal disclaimer, don't go breaking into buildings. Don't go into abandoned buildings. Don't go into the woods at night. All that stuff I'm supposed to say. But that's what I did. I did all those things. All of them. And that's how I started. And then it got to the point where I would get out of the ambulance company at night and people would be waiting for me. And they're like, are you that ghost guy? I'm like, the hell's the ghost? Yeah, I guess. Sure. Like, are you going somewhere tonight? I was probably going home, but what do we want to do? And so we'd go to places. We'd go to places in and about Rhode Island, and I would take him to places like the Lad School and Hell's Gates and the Old Witch's Cottage, and we would go and have little adventures. Now, in terms of actually seeing anything paranormal, it was mostly, I think, just like that adrenaline rush, getting scared. Maybe you'd hear footsteps or something, but, you know, it was a tainted environment. You never knew who else was around. So it wasn't any, like, hardcore investigations, but I always was just interested in it. And I would start going to the library. I would read books and things about paranormal ideas and folklore and haunted Rhode Island, haunted New England. And I was like, man, this is really cool. And it wasn't until one night I came home from the ambulance company and I was just flicking through TV and I see these two guys walking around somebody's house and they're looking for ghosts. And I'm like, the hell is this? And then I go and I see another episode and I notice that not only are they looking for ghosts on TV, but they're in Rhode Island. I was like, oh my God, this is like what I want to do. Because I loved going to the abandoned buildings, but like, you know, you don't want to get chased out by police. You don't want to fall and get hurt and all that stuff. But that's, again, what I was doing. But I see these guys legally doing this. And so I sent all of them an email. I went to the website, the Atlantic Paranormal Society website, and I sent everybody a message telling them who I was, the things I've been doing, the shadow figure I saw. And nobody got back to me. Not one person wrote back. And so I emailed. I even drove by the headquarters, you know, because you used to be able to see the headquarters on the show. So I drove by there and yeah, no takers, nobody answering the door. And I just stayed with it. I kept emailing them and basically wore them down. One of the young ladies that was on the show offered to meet with me. We went out, had a little coffee, and then they got me to meet Jay and Grant. And we went to a coffee house that is not as good as Dunkin' Donuts. It has some stupid mermaid logo. We went there, and I told them about the things I've been doing, my degree in television production, how I knew how to, you know, set up DVRs and all that stuff, but I've never had those opportunities. And they were nice enough to invite me on the team, understanding that I wasn't going to be on the show. I was just going to be part of the local team, which was fine. I was just looking for access to these places. I just wanted to be able to go do this kind of work, you know, and it just kind of took off from there. And then I remember the Harrisville Fire Department was the first case that they invited me to be on that was for television purposes. And that led to 47 states and 27 countries. So I've done a lot of investigating. I've traveled a lot, and it's opened up a lot of doors, and I still love it. And I feel like, although it's not the top thing for me for, you know, for paying the bills and stuff, I'm still working the day job in healthcare and everything. It is a big part of who I am. I love spooky season. I love all things Halloween. And yeah, so that's how it all came to be. But Kris and I are also curious, for those of you that are watching the video, and again, thank you for watching the video. video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Put down in the comments below, like, how did you guys get started? You know, not necessarily what was your first experience, but what was it that made you go out and investigate? What was your first investigation like? Where did you go? How'd you meet up with people? How'd you become a paranormal investigator? Thanks again for watching, Rebellious Spirits. We'll be back soon with something new.